So I want to tell another hybrid story, and it's from a paper that we just submitted about using traditional healers to work with domestic violence. So we found out that the best way, as far as we're concerned, to reduce domestic violence in Indian country is to get the traditionals involved. And so I'll tell you a story about a woman who lived on a reserve, a Cree reserve. She was in her 40s, her son was in his 20s, he lived next door, you know, sort of the family compound kind of thing. And he was always beating her up. And that's not such a good thing. But, you know, she would get drunk and do crazy things and beat him up sometimes. He'd get drunk and do crazy things and beat her up. And, you know, and it seemed like their favorite spirit was bourbon, you know, so, which is not a traditional spirit. Maybe in Kentucky, but not in Cree country. And so she's in my office again complaining. She always wants Ativan, you know. I guess if you run out of bourbon, Ativan is the next best thing, you know. So one day, I'm kind of tired of her story, you know, it's kind of boring. And one day I get the traditional elder healer to come in with me. And we're sitting there, and he agreed with me that we play a trick on her. And I'd only refill her Ativan if she'd go to ceremony with him. So we decided to play a trick. And she really wanted that Ativan. So she said, all right, I'll go to ceremony. You know, and I said, now if you don't go, you know, next time you come back, I'm not giving you no more Ativan. It's the end of that Ativan if you don't go to ceremony. And she said, I'll go. So she went to ceremony with him. She went to the sweat and she got doctored afterward, and she kind of liked it, to her surprise. You know, because she'd been out of the traditional world and in the alcohol world for some time. And so over the course, these things can be slow. You know, over the course of 18 months, she transformed. She kept going to ceremony, you know, and slowly but surely she drank less and less. And over time, her son decided to start going to ceremony because he thought, this is weird. You know, mom's not getting drunk and beating me up anymore. What's this about? And he was curious in one of his sober moments to find out, you know, what that was about. And so he started going. And I don't actually know if they still drink any or not, but they sure don't beat each other up anymore. It's been a couple years now. And they stopped beating each other up, and they regularly go to ceremony. So how did traditional healers pull that off? You know, in their view, what they do is to persuade people to drop the bad stories that they've grown up with and pick up good stories, traditional stories that are better to live by. So without knowing it, they're sort of narrative therapists, you know, because they don't know that term. But in their view, everything is story. You see, there's no defective people in their view. That's what's different about the Eurocentric view. They say they see defective stories and not defective people. And so if you're drinking and drugging and beating someone up and going to jail and coming out and all that stuff, it's not because you're a bad person, it's because you're living bad stories that got told when you were growing up. That's how I heard this elder explain it. And so his job is to offer better stories, to compete with the old stories, and to encourage the person to put the old stories aside. And how do you do that? A lot of it has to do with sort of cultivating ethnic pride. So the typical line is, well, you're a Cree mother, and Cree mothers don't beat up their sons, you know. And then there's a story about mother-son relationships in Cree, which are very important. Or to the son, you know, say, well, you're a Cree man, and Cree men don't beat up women, you know, except if the woman is twice your size and starts it. But that's another story. So you see, the way their view of what they do is that they implant better stories for people to live by. And in the ceremony, then, the spirits come and they remove the sickness, whatever the sickness is, the sort of inner disharmony or imbalance. The spirits fix it. They realign you. They rebalance you, realign you, restore harmony in your relationships. They do a lot of the work. And then your job, this is the human agency part, your job is to do what they tell you. So let me give you an example of this. I'm going to give you an example from my work. And I'm not really a traditional healer. I call myself a postmodern, semi-urban neo-shaman. And that's because I have so many stories going that I don't know which way is which. So I'm like a little res dog, I got a little Scotch, a little, some Cherokee, a little Quebecois, some Oglala. It's like those res dogs with the different colored eyes. So I can't do anything purely because I'm just such a mélange. But anyway, I've been studying this stuff for 30 years or more. And so I was teaching a class in Vermont, and I wanted to demonstrate to them what traditional healers do. So I was going to try to pretend to be a traditional healer. But of course I had to kind of do my own thing too, within that framework. So, so a woman volunteered for the demonstration, and this is a class on traditional cultural healing, so just so you'll know the context. Anthropology 4 something, I don't know, 425, at Johnson State College. Anyway, so a woman volunteers to be the patient, and she's got a really interesting story. She's having chronic abdominal pain, kind of like in the liver area and radiating to her back. And she's been to her doctor. Her doctor trained where I trained, 10 minutes. Her doctor trained where I trained at UVM, University of Vermont. And she's now had 1 MRI, 2 CAT scans, 2 ultrasounds, a HIDA scan, and umpteen blood tests. And the doctor's conclusion is, maybe it's fatty liver, it's probably all in your head, you need a psychiatrist here, take some Vicodin. Is that familiar to anyone? Is this a familiar story? Yeah. So, okay, so I sit down with her, and this is something that I don't often say in mixed company, but I hear voices. I hear spirits. So, and that's been true all my life. So, but nobody's locked me up yet for it, so that's good. So anyway, I sang a song to call the spirits in, and offered some tobacco, and they said, "Oh, piece of cake," I said, "What's wrong?" They said, "Oh, it's wheat and dairy. That's her problem." I said, "Really?" They said, "Yeah." They said, "Ask her how much grain she eats." I said to her, "How much grain do you eat?" She said, "Well, that's my main food item. I mostly eat grain." I said, "And how about dairy?" "Lots of it," she said. They said, "Well, that's what's making her sick." They said, "Just tell her to cut out all grains, all dairy, and all soy for 30 days, and she'll be well." I said, "All right, I'll tell her that." And I did. And she said, she's taking it in. And they said, "Oh, and one other thing, tell her to eat more deer." They said, "She's got to eat deer to get well. And she can have some berries with it. Because, it's summer. Deer and berries, it's summer food in Vermont."